I'm John Cirucci. I'm a member of the Global Societal Initiatives Committee at AIChE and a foundation trustee. We're here today having a conversation with 4 chemical engineering students from Mississippi State University and the Illinois Institute of Technology. They're all AIChE student members and members of Engineers Without Borders, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves.
I'm Angelica Myers. I'm a sophomore in Chemie this year, and I'm serving as our chapter's treasurer.
I'm Erin Wynn. I'm a junior at Mississippi State University, and I'm serving as the vice president of the MSU chapter.
My name is Oscar Guzman. I'm a senior in chemical engineering from the Illinois Institute of Technology. I'm the president of the EWB chapter there, as well as the external vice president for our AIChE chapter.
Hi, my name is Tommy. I'm a 4th year chemical engineering at Illinois Institute of Technology. I currently serve as the treasurer for EWB and external vice president for AIChE.
The reason we're talking today is because during this last year, the Global Societal Initiatives Committee has awarded these schools grant monies to support their international projects, and we're having a conversation today about to learn a little bit more about what they've been doing and what their experience is. So I'm going to ask, I'll ask you first from Illinois Institute of Technology to tell us about your project in Nicaragua.
Perfect. So we started our San Claudio program in 2012. From there, we worked in San Claudio, Nicaragua, it's a rural community there. And we first started with a lot of assessment trips because for the bridge project, there's a dredging of water where there's a huge flood. So we went there and did some assessment trips where we created relationships with the Rotary Club, the FNA International, or NGO, and community leaders there. Since then, we did a lot of hydraulical study there, and it turns out that the bridge project wasn't viable due to the prices of it. So we moved on to their second need, which was sanitation.
Yeah, and sanitation was the community's second need. With that, we noticed that through our assessments, there were huge issues with bathrooms within the community, as well as hand washing and that knowledge. So once we started our sanitation program, that's where we introduced our composting latrines, as well as our hand washing stations, which both have much of an educational aspect to them with the children. And we implemented our compostable latrines and hand washing stations in May of 2016, and now we're going to move on to the monitoring stage.
Okay. And Mississippi State's been working in a different continent, in Zambia. Tell me about it.
Okay, we're working in Sumatera, Zambia, Africa. So this past summer was our 4th year of our 5-year project, and we're installing water wells for the communities there. So we've installed 9 wells now.
On our first assessment trip, we worked with our NGO and our in-country guide to kind of go out and make some assessments and kind of get to know everybody and that kind of stuff. And then on our first implementation trip, we installed 2 wells, and then we installed 3 of our 4 on our second trip. We had a little complications with some drilling equipment, and we weren't able to get our 4th one installed. And then this past summer, we installed 3 more wells, bringing our total to 9. And this next summer should be our final implementation trip.
Okay.
No, final assessment trip.
Okay. And now it's kind of interesting, with both of these projects, you spent a good bit of time up front, traveling there, talking to people. This doesn't sound like a chemical engineering project. You just get the scope, spec it out, design the equipment, build it. How is this different? And why do you go there and do this assessment work?
Biggest thing is just the distance. It's hard to kind of communicate back and forth being here and working in Zambia because their culture and everything's different. For us, we're really rural areas, so it takes a good bit of time to get out there and communicate with drilling teams to get out there with us because they have to work around their schedules, we have to work around ours to kind of time everything just right. So with our first initial trip, going out there and kind of putting a face to a name, really starting to get to know people and kind of, okay, you're going to be there, right? That's kind of very helpful. So when we're there for the next summer, we know who we're going to use, we know where we're going to go, and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a communication. That's really the major barrier and between everything, because what's so important between all this, between all the partnerships and the communities, really trust. And all of that just comes with good communication. And working in Nicaragua, we obviously face the fact that it's a Spanish-speaking country, and we don't have that many Spanish speakers in some of our programs. Also, as we came to learn, like initially at the community, we find that, you know, here in the U.S., we're very blunt, as in, you know, we ask a question, we expect an answer right away. So as we were there in Nicaragua, we started to learn that, you know, when you come off that way, people are a little timid. They prefer to tell you their answers in the form of like a metaphor or a story, that sort of thing. So communication, and even across all of our project partners, like Tanya was saying earlier, that's the one thing we really have to focus on in all aspects to really make these projects successful.
And on top of that, since we're chemical engineers, and when we first became involved, we didn't really have any internship opportunities or anything that we've learned. So when we did travel, we learned a lot about like how to work on sustainable engineering projects, because our first project was a bridge project. So we examined a lot of bridges, latrines, and pretty much find out the flaws of it to understand like how can we make this sustainable, how can this be long term, what can we do for this community, and from that we've learned a lot from doing that.
What have been some of the biggest challenges and obstacles in working on these projects?
So besides besides communication, I would probably say just there's a long distance, and then just working with the community. I mean, sometimes like for us, we definitely have a language barrier because nobody in our group speaks their language. We have to be completely dependent on our NGO and our guide. So it's really kind of hard to speak to people, which granted, a lot of the people do speak English, but it's really like broken English. So it's really hard to come across and get our answers answered. Like one of the times we were working on the project, we were trying to get our well installed, and we drilled a dry well our first time around. And looking around later, we were about to do our second one, and we found a well a few feet away. It was just, which it was broken because in the dry season the water table drops, and the well wasn't initially drilled deep enough, so they still didn't have clean water. They were using awful sources, but coming across in the beginning with, they still didn't really trust us, I guess you could say, or they didn't realize how devoted we were to really giving them a well, and like how committed we were. And so they were kind of still, they just want help so bad. They want a well, so they want to tell you stories like why you should help them. But we're there to help, but by them not telling us initially that there was one already drilled in a close proximity, we had to drill a dry well. And then we turned around and we went closer to that location and hit water it pretty fast. So it was challenging.
Good thing.
Yes. Not as soon as hitting it the second time.
Yeah, I'd say a huge something to overcome is all handling the logistics, whether it's construction. Because when we're down there, you know, we construct things to our norms here. You know, we know the materials we have, and when we're trying to build something in another country, we don't always have easy access to what types of materials they use, the prices of these materials. And I know it even came up as an issue when, you know, where we constructed our compostable latrines, and, you know, we asked for this material, and, you know, turns out the contractors had no idea what that was, so just kind of, you know, didn't think about ordering it. So really kind of aligning to their norms there with construction has been a huge barrier.
I can certainly draw an analogy between this and, in general, what chemical engineers have to be doing and working internationally with long distances, different cultures, communication barriers. So it's a terrific experience. So let me ask about that for all of you personally. You know, what have you taken away from this, and how has it grown you as a chemical engineer? I'm going to start with you, Tom.
Well, when I first went, the first year I went, I was a freshman, and I really wanted to travel just to understand the cultural differences there compared to here. And from there, I learned a lot how to be an engineer, because we did a lot of sightseeing where we looked at different bridges, because when we were there, we were working on bridge projects, and we were looking at like the rear and tear, and there was one bridge that we saw that I still remember that it looked like it was 30 years old. And then our NGO told us like, it's actually 3 years old. Like, because the material there, they don't have the resources that we have in America. So trying to understand how we can make that sustainable project and how to progress them and empower them, that's something that was very rewarding for me. So I learned a lot from doing that, trying to understand their cultures, being able to communicate with them, that's always a plus.
Yeah, I'd say as a chemical engineer, this has really helped me improve my attention to detail. Like I said, when we're doing some of these calculations behind our structures, you realize once you're down there that when you make a mistake in that, this can generally affect people's lives, And in chemical engineering classes, sometimes we live for the partial credit, of not necessarily getting the answer right, but getting 75% of the way there. And you realize that when you go out there and you do real engineering, that you can't function, you can't expect to pass with just, the 75% getting, some of the work right. You have to get to the answer, you have to be exact when you get to it.
So I would say just overall, just realizing how we have it so different than people in Africa and Zambia. Coming to the realization that people don't get to go to school every day because their job is to go collect their water and come back, so that their family has water to drink and to use and that kind of thing. Just being able to go and see and knowing that, it's crazy the things that people are drinking over there, because that's all they've got. And then I would also say just planning ahead, because for us, it takes us about 2 days to get out to where we're going. So if we forget something, we got to just make do with what we've got. So for a chemical engineering aspect, I would definitely say that just learning to improvise, taking away, dealing with what you got. If you've got things that don't go as planned, you just kind of figure out what to do next and just go with it. Just continually going with it and going with it. So.
I think coming from just the local standpoint of realizing, even as a student in engineering, what an impact we can have. Just the amount of money that I pay for tuition or school that can actually also, that same amount of money can implement a well in Africa and provide water to hundreds of people and change their lives. And just knowing that even as a student, even as an 18-year-old, you can be making a difference across the world. So that's super cool.
Well, I have to say, it's really just awesome that you're doing this stuff, and you're doing this stuff while you're working your way through a chemical engineering program. So hats off to you. Congratulations on being the recipients of the AIChE grant for your project. We've been doing this now for quite a few years, and very happy to have really invested both in your project but also in you. It's really terrific to hear how you've grown from doing this stuff, and I thank you for coming here and telling us about it.
Thank you.